provide you with the lowest per GB rates, night or day. SLT 4G, driving you ever forward.
Good evening, making headlines first at 9. Echoes of denial. Prime Minister Ranil Wickremesinghe responds to US Vice President Mike Pence over his fears of foreign military presence at the Hambantota port.
There is no military dominance in the Indian Ocean by the Chinese.
All seats taken. 3 non-members of Parliament appointed to complete the Constitutional Council. Could it be? Dr. Gunadasa Amarasekara welcomes the concept of a caretaker government.
It should be not only a change of heads, there should be a change of policy.
No end in sight. A final decision on an electoral system evades the Election Commission as well as party leaders. Enough is enough. Calls for immediate evacuation of asylum seekers on Pacific nation Nauru.
Let's nurture fresh colors seen by little eyes, guided by the light of our love. This space is for your little one. Adding flavor to World Children's Day. Tiara.
Bringing you news from across Sri Lanka and around the world on First at 9, Sri Lanka's news channel other than a 24/7. I'm Indivari Amuatta. Among your top stories tonight, a fire broke out in Palavatta and Sri Lanka's Supreme Court affirmed the death penalty on former Minister Duminda Silva. We begin with other top stories tonight. Prime Minister Ranil Wickremesinghe calls for dialogue between maritime users for the Indian Ocean region and littoral states to build a shared understanding to combat existing threats to the Indian Ocean that could jeopardize the entire region's economic potential. The Premier pointed out that it is of importance to the country to take the initiative in bringing the region together to address issues of freedom of navigation and digital connectivity as Sri Lanka harbours aspirations of transforming itself into a trading hub of the Indian Ocean. The Prime Minister's remarks were expressed while delivering the keynote address at the inaugural session of Indian Ocean Conference in Colombo this morning. The conference, Indian Ocean Defining Our Future, aiming to create a platform for Indian Ocean littoral states and major maritime users to discuss issues of mutual interest and concern, was inaugurated at the Temple Trees this morning under the patronage of President Maithripala Sirisena. The 2-day conference is held at a time when the Indian Ocean has emerged as one of the world's busiest and most critical trade corridors, carrying 2/3 of global oil shipments and 1/3 of bulk cargo, hosting the most critical sea lanes of communication. Prime Minister Ranil Wickremesinghe delivered the keynote address at the inauguration.
As I see it, the question should be given the importance of Indian Ocean, whether we can leave its security and stability to chance. Shouldn't we take advantage of the benign strategic atmosphere that exists to create a maritime order in the Indian Ocean that can withstand challenges that may emerge in the future? In my view, anticipating challenges and crafting solutions in such an atmosphere can assist in a more manageable future for this important ocean. Otherwise, the geopolitical power interplay resulting from absence of an accepted maritime order will convert the Indian Ocean into a center of tension. These strategic tensions can threaten the immense potential of this region. Such tensions are not only limited to the surface of the Indian Ocean, but now extend to the subsurface waters and its airspace as well.
Meanwhile, Prime Minister Wickremesinghe told Indian Ocean delegates that Sri Lanka aspires to set up an international centre for excellence on the safety of undersea cables.
Over 80% of internet traffic is transferred using undersea cables. The economic and commercial well-being of most countries are now dependent on internet connectivity, and the seabed is becoming an ungoverned maze of undersea cables. What are the security threats, vulnerabilities and responsibilities around the growth of undersea cables on the seabed? These are ocean issues that have received limited attention, have the far-reaching consequences into the future. Sri Lanka, situated in the middle of the Indian Ocean, sees a need to start examining these issues in depth. Much of the undersea cable connectivity, in fact to be precise, All other digital connectivity between West and East traverses over the seabed adjacent to Sri Lanka. We want to ensure the freedom of digital connectivity not only as an Indian Ocean objective but as a global objective.
Also addressing the session, State Minister Dr. Harsha De Silva commented on the recent incident where a Chinese warship sailed within yards of an American destroyer as the US vessel was in uncontested waters in the South China Sea. Several views were expressed regarding the recent fuel price hike. The latest, rather, the Ceylon Petroleum Corporation and Lanka Indian Oil Company increased fuel prices with effect from last midnight in line with the government's fuel pricing formula, which sees a price revision on the 10th of each month. Last night's price hike marks the 5th occasion that prices on fuel were increased within a span of 9 months.
The committee appointed to look into fuel prices under the fuel pricing formula decided to increase fuel prices once more after taking global crude prices into account. Accordingly, both Ceylon Petroleum Corporation and the Lanka IOC increased a litre of octane 92 to 155 rupees and super diesel to 141 rupees. However, there were discrepancies in the prices that were increased by the LIOC and the CPC. That was indicated when the CPC increased a litre of octane 95 petrol to 169 rupees, while the LIOC increased the same to 172 rupees. Following instructions by the Ministry of Finance, the CPC kept the prices of auto diesel unchanged at 123 rupees per litre, while the LIOC increased its price to 129 rupees a litre. As per these fuel price revisions within a span of 9 months, a litre of octane 92 is increased by 38 rupees, a litre of octane 95 petrol has been increased by 41 rupees, a litre of auto diesel has gone up by 28 rupees, while a litre of super diesel is pushed up by 31 rupees. Following the government's announcement of the fuel price hike, many fuel stations did not pump fuel last night, leading to long queues of vehicles. Meanwhile, a protest was organised by a Southern Provincial Councillor and councillors representing the Hikkatu Urban Council and the Ratgama Pradesh Sabha against the fuel price hike today. It was worked off at the Ratgama Junction in Gool. In the meantime, the National Three-Wheeler Association said that their fares will also be increased from tomorrow owing to the fuel price hike. The latest bout of fuel price revision was one of the main topics in today's political arena as well. Fuel prices are still less than what they were on the 8th of January in 2015. At times, we are not satisfied with the way it's done. Price of gas was reduced by 130 rupees and as a result, it had to be hiked by 190 rupees later. According to our last fuel price revision before the government changed in 2015, a litre of diesel was 111 rupees with a litre of petrol sold at 150 rupees. But we had purchased a barrel of crude at $105.87. Today, the government purchases a barrel of crude at $86, with price of auto diesel increased to 123 rupees, with octane 92 rising to 155 rupees. I am of the stance that the government should intervene and reduce prices if things continue like this. The PM said in Parliament yesterday that fuel prices increase in India as well, while the entire world uses the fuel pricing formula. But the Indian PM gave a fuel concession recently, but our PM only hikes prices. Everyone in the government, including ministers and parliamentarians, are made aware of this pricing formula. How can there be a discrepancy between CPC prices and LIOC prices if these prices are revised according to a formula?
Parliament today approved 3 non-members of Parliament nominated for the Constitutional Council. The move completes the appointment of Constitutional Council and it will convene for the first time tomorrow, during which a new Chief Justice will be nominated.
The Speaker of Parliament, the Prime Minister and the Leader of the Opposition are automatic appointees to the Constitutional Council, and Minister Mahinda Samaraweera is appointed as the representative of the President. Minister Thalata Atukorala is appointed as the representative of the Prime Minister and Chamal Rajpaksha has been appointed as the representative of the opposition leader. JVP parliamentarian Bimal Ratnayaka will represent the rest of the parliamentarians at the Constitutional Council. Professor Jayanta Dhanapala, Attorney at Law Ahmed Javed Yusuf and Senior Lecturer Naganathan Selvakumar complete the council as non-parliamentary members. No one knows how the Constitutional Council works. No one knows how the promotions are given. The Chief Justice retires tomorrow. The Constitutional Council has been unable to make an appointment yet. The Constitutional Council has the power to reject cases assigned even by the President. We should be proud of that. We saved those who were stamped on by Mahinda Rajapaksa. The Constitutional Assembly will convene at noon tomorrow to appoint a new Chief Justice. If we consider someone like the Inspector General of Police as someone appointed by the Constitutional Council, he too has a responsibility to protect the dignity of the Council. On the contrary, the behaviour of the IGP makes us doubt the Constitutional Council. We haven't put in place the criteria that should be considered when making these appointments. There's no use of appointing retired state officials for certain commissions. Officials who are currently in service should be appointed for them because they have a responsibility, a set of rules, and will be punished for wrongdoings. The Judicial Service Commission is an example because its members are currently in service.
A meeting was held today between leaders of political parties and Chairman of the Election Commission, Mahinda Deshapriya, with the Provincial Council election on the agenda. Speaking to media, however, party leaders said that a final decision on the electoral system under which the elections will be held was not arrived at during the meeting.
The Prime Minister has appointed a committee on the delimitation report. We were able to hold elections after the President issues the Gazette based on the report at the end of 2 months. The debate was on whether the election should be held under the old electoral system or the new one. We suggested that the election be held under the new system. Some parties, including the United National Party, suggested that the old system be adopted. A final decision was not arrived at. No, there is no such thing. The stance of the UNP is to hold elections as soon as possible. However, to hold elections under either of the systems, 2/3 majority of the Parliament is a must. The committee appointed by the Prime Minister convened recently, and with its decision, we can go for elections at the end of the 2 months. This government can't face an election right now. Therefore, they will postpone elections by any means. As a result, we stress that the people of this country can't expect elections. There's a doubt as to whether both the presidential election and the parliamentary election will be held by this government. We still have hopes that the Election Commission will take every measure possible to hold elections on time.
Former President Mahinda Rajapaksa identifies toppling the government as the prime responsibility of the opposition. The former president commented on the present state of the country while addressing a function held at his official residence in Vijayarama Mawatha in Colombo today. The situation of the country is very dangerous politically. On one hand, they sell state property, and on the other, it is the police which conspire to kill the president and the former defense secretary. The court only deliberates selected cases. I think it's time for the courts to see the truth more clearly. What we should do as the opposition is to remove this government as soon as possible. Meanwhile, the former president responded to questions raised by journalists at the Abherama temple in Narahempita this evening. There is no such thing. There's a proposal, but we don't know until it's done. We don't have high hopes for it. What we're going to discuss is what to be done if such a proposal is brought to us. In the meantime, the party leaders' meeting of the joint opposition commenced at around 5 in the evening today under the patronage of former President Mahinda Rajapaksa at his official residence. It is not titles that are important for us. What we want is to lift the people and the country up, and we will get together for that. The Federation of National Organizations welcomes any move to set up a caretaker government, but also insists a change in existing policies. Convener of the organization, Dr. Gunadasa Amarasekara, stresses that constitutional amendments should not be brought until a new government is elected by the people.
Economically, the country is completely getting bankrupt. there are no foreign investments, and but those investments are also being withdrawn. Politically, we find that the country is still in the grips of the Western powers. I think the present move to change the government we welcome. It should be not only a change of heads, there should be a change of policy to some extent. One other important thing is, till they form a permanent government, no initiative must be taken to implement these constitutional changes.
The Hambantota port has been under the spotlight in international media for quite some time, and last week US Vice President Mike Pence alleged that China is using what he calls debt diplomacy to expand its global influence, citing Sri Lanka as an example where the country's Hambantota port could soon become a forward military base for Beijing's growing Blue Water Navy. Speaking at an event held at the Oxford Union recently, Prime Minister Ranil Wickremesinghe responded to the claims, saying there is no military dominance in the Indian Ocean by the Chinese. During the interview this week, the Premier also touched on the process of reconciliation in the Northern Province, which was also thrown into doubt at the recent UNHRC session.
And the trade relationship you have with China there, military dominance in the Indian Ocean. How can countries like Sri Lanka, which are smaller, feel safe with the protection of international law?
There is no military dominance in the Indian Ocean by the Chinese. It's difficult for any outside nation to get in because the choke points are different entry to the Indian Ocean. Economically, China certainly is making a bid to create a China-centric order. But as long as it's commercial and it's economic, we couldn't manage it. There have been questions of debt involving different countries, but that's for each country to decide what's the level of debt they want to have with China. We ourselves are going to the next stage of getting in investments for industrializing and financial activity. So we feel that Chinese presence economically is a matter for individual countries to determine how you handle it. Militarily, Chinese have had some warships and submarines there, but it cannot have that military presence in the Indian Ocean. Actually, it's very difficult to get into the Indian Ocean if you are not a littoral country. And other than the USA, the others are unable really to make a presence in the Indian Ocean.
Given that the military defeat to the LTTE is now complete, what's the best way to encourage further social and economic integration of this community, both in Sri Lanka and in the diaspora?
A military defeat of the LTT was inevitable, since the LTT did not take the opportunity that was available to come for talks, and it lost its credibility. What was required after the defeat of the LTT was a serious attempt at reconciliation. This is why many of the political parties got together, we put aside our differences, put forward a common candidate, and now we started discussions among ourselves as to what is needed for reconciliation. The return of lands which were occupied by the military at that time when the war was on, resettlement of people, which means building houses and getting them back into occupation. The question of war victims, we brought in new legislation. We strengthened our Human Rights Commission. We've established by law a missing persons office so they can start taking account of who's missing where. The cabinet has decided to repeal the Prevention of Terrorist Act and replace it with a Prevention of Terrorism law, which we have been discussing with the EU, with the British government. And as far as the North and the East is concerned, they showed that they also have political clout at the last presidential election. And all parties are now wooing the North. Within the East, the political systems are functioning. If at all there are too many political groups in the East, and no one can really form a stable provincial administration in the Eastern Provincial Council. But normalization is proceeding in the North, especially in the Vanni, where largest number of deaths have taken place. Army has not been a major issue as far as the Tamil people are concerned. There, the relations are good with the army. Army itself is now getting into a civilian role, and the army is more interested in doing peacekeeping activity in Mali, so they don't want to have any black marks.
Well, a leading clothing store located in the area of Palavatta in Battaramulla was destroyed in a major fire today. Police said fire brigade units from Kotte, Colombo, Dehivala and Battaramulla were assisted by firefighters from the Air Force and the Army to douse the fire. The Air Force had also deployed a Bell 212 helicopter with Bambi bucket to douse the fire. The Kottava-Borella 174 bus route was also closed for traffic at Pelavatta owing to the fire. Police said the fire erupted at around 11 this morning and that the store had been completely destroyed. The flames also spread to a nearby tyre shop, destroying it.
Watching Sri Lanka's award-winning news channel, Derana 24/7.
Welcome back to the news. The Supreme Court today dismissed the appeals filed by former MP Duminda Silva and two others over the death penalties handed to them for the murder of former presidential advisor Bharata Lakshman Premachandra. The court, however, acquitted another accused, the police officer assigned to Duminda Silva's security, Anura Tushara de Mel. On the 25th of July, the five-judge bench of the Supreme Court, comprising of Chief Justice Priyasad Dep, reserved judgment in the appeal by the accused, and all parties had been directed to file their written submissions on the 10th of August. The five-member Supreme Court judge bench today delivered its verdict, which was reached unanimously. Chiefs of global finance and reserve banks gathered today in Bali, Indonesia for the annual gathering of the International Monetary Fund and World Bank amid rising concerns over trade war and risks of global economic crisis. Minister of Finance and Mass Media Mangala Samaraweera is the chair of the group of 24 developing nations, which is active in lobbying international institutions on issues of concerns in the global economy. Speaking at the gathering, Minister Samaraweera said that vulnerability must be looked at not only from a trade and commerce point of view, but must take into account financial risk as well. He also said, quote, in an era where currencies and interest rates are volatile mainly due to the unpredictability of external factors such as unprecedented challenges to the well-established international trading regime and the consequential effects of spiraling energy costs and natural disasters may push smaller nations towards uncontrollable economic chaos, unquote. He went on to say that Sri Lanka urges the Commonwealth to redouble its efforts and begin implementing a well-targeted and thought-out economic recovery plan to the financial fallout of increasingly frequent natural disasters. Here's a look at your currency rates now.
Sri Lanka's premier news channel, Derana 24/7.
In your international news, medical charity Medecins Sans Frontieres has called for the immediate evacuation of all asylum seekers on Pacific nation Nauru amid a devastating mental health crisis. MSF provided 11 months of care to those houses in an Australian-run detention centre on the tiny island, but was recently ordered by Nauru to leave. The Nauru detention centre was set up by Australia in 2013 in a controversial deal to house asylum seekers intercepted while trying to reach Australian shores by boat.
The mental health conditions of asylum seekers and refugees trapped on Nauru is absolutely devastating. Shockingly, of the refugee patients we treated, at least 78 had attempted suicide, had suicidal thoughts and inflicted self-harm. and they are conservative numbers. Many children suffering traumatic withdrawal syndrome exist in a semi-comatose state, unable to eat, drink, and talk. We witnessed an ongoing significant deterioration of mental health among our asylum seeker and refugee patients. This was very clearly attributable to the indefinite nature of detention, held on Nauru for 5 years, with, for many of them, no resolution in sight.
So amongst the children, they were presenting with depression and anxiety, post-traumatic stress disorder, and we were seeing suicide attempts in children as young as 9 years old.
In sports, we have tennis. There were easy wins for the world number 3 and 5 at the Shanghai Masters today as they booked a berth in the competition's quarter-final lineup. Among the casualties was Australian teenager Alex de Minaur and Italian Marco Cecchinato.
Germany's Alexander Zverev swept aside Australia's Alex de Minaur today to reach the quarter-finals of the Shanghai Masters with a 6-1, 6-4 victory. World number 5 Zverev won 12 of his 13 first service points in a first set, which lasted just 27 minutes. Novak Djokovic, meanwhile, beat Marco Cecchinato in straight sets with a convincing 6-4, 6-love score to advance into the quarterfinals. Serbian world number 3's win sets up a quarterfinal against South Africa's Kevin Anderson, whom he defeated in this year's Wimbledon final.
You are watching Sri Lanka's #1 news channel, Other Derana 24/7.
We have Manusha Jayathilaka at the Weather Centre with updates on the weather condition.
A very good evening, everyone, and welcome to Forecast First. The severe cyclonic storm Titli in the Bay of Bengal made landfall in the Indian coast near Andhra Pradesh this morning, and it will be moving towards the northwestern part of the country in the next 12 hours. The system is now located 1,100 kilometers away from Trincomalee, and it is likely to intensify further, but the Department of Meteorology says that its effect on Sri Lanka will gradually reduce from today onwards. Until then, there will be showers or thunder showers mainly in the central, southern and Uva provinces as well as in Kalutara and Ratnapura districts with fairly heavy falls of about 75 millimeters. The seas will also be rough and thunder showers are expected in the coastal line extending from Colombo to Batiklo via Galle and Hambantota. There will also be fairly strong winds of up to 50 kilometers per hour in these areas. So the Disaster Management Centre advises the naval and fishing communities to refrain from venturing into the sea for the next few days. That's all that we have from the Weather Centre tonight. Let's now take a look at your city-by-city forecast.
That's it from the Other Derana First at 9 newscast for tonight. But before we go, we'd like to leave you with some aerial visuals of the Eastern Province. The Eastern Province today is known for its golden beaches and the natural harbour. Enjoy these visuals. Have a pleasant evening. Good night.
Bringing you the news and information 24 hours a day. This is Sri Lanka's premier news channel, Other Derana 24/7.